Most people don't feel stressed about money because they don't have enough of it. They feel stressed because everything about it feels complicated, unclear, and constantly moving. And the strange part is, the more they try to fix it, the more complicated it becomes. I used to think financial confidence came from knowing more strategies, more investments, more ways to optimize every dollar. It felt logical at the time, like if I could just understand enough, I'd finally feel in control. But what actually happened was the opposite. The more I added, the less clear things became. Every new idea introduced another decision, another variable, another small doubt that sat quietly in the background. Should I be doing this instead? Am I missing something better? Is this even the right approach anymore? And that constant questioning doesn't feel like progress, it feels like noise. Most people assume that financial confidence comes from complexity, like having multiple income streams, tracking dozens of metrics, or knowing every investment option out there. But in reality, that kind of complexity often creates hesitation, and hesitation is where confidence starts to disappear. Because confidence doesn't come from having more choices, it comes from having fewer decisions that actually matter. Think about someone like Alex. Alex is doing okay financially. Nothing extreme, just a steady income, some savings, and a general awareness that money matters. But over time, Alex starts trying to do better. So he opens multiple savings accounts for different goals. He downloads apps to track every expense. He watches videos about investing and starts putting money into different places, stocks, funds, maybe even something a bit more speculative because it sounded promising. At first, it feels productive. It feels like progress. But slowly, something changes. Now Alex isn't just managing money, he's managing a system. And that system needs attention. It needs updates, decisions, adjustments. Every month there's something new to review, something to tweak, something that might not be working as expected. And without realizing it, Alex goes from feeling on top of things to feeling slightly behind all the time. Not because he's failing, but because the system itself never feels finished. That's the part people don't talk about enough. Complexity creates a moving target. When your financial life becomes layered with too many moving parts, you never quite reach a point where you can relax into it. There's always something else you could be doing, optimizing, or fixing. And that constant sense of, maybe I'm not doing enough, quietly drains your confidence. Because confidence isn't built on perfection, it's built on clarity. And clarity comes from simplicity. Now think about someone else, like Sam. Sam doesn't do anything extreme. He keeps things straightforward. One main account for spending, one for saving, and a simple investment approach that he understands well enough to trust over time. There's no constant switching, no chasing trends, no trying to outsmart the system. And because of that, something interesting happens. Sam doesn't spend much time thinking about money day to day. Not because he doesn't care, but because his system doesn't demand attention. And that creates something most people overlook, mental space. When your financial life is simple, you don't carry it around in your head all the time. You don't wake up wondering if you should move money somewhere else, or if you're missing out on a better strategy. You already know what you're doing. And that knowing, that quiet, steady clarity, is where calm confidence starts to show up. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It doesn't feel like a breakthrough moment. It just feels like things are handled. And that feeling is incredibly powerful. Because once your mind is no longer occupied with constant financial decisions, it can focus on something else. Your work, your time, your relationships, your goals. Things that actually move your life forward in a meaningful way. But when money feels complicated, it tends to take up more space than it should. Not just practically, but mentally. You start overthinking small decisions. You hesitate before spending, not because you can't afford it, but because you're unsure how it fits into everything else. You second-guess your plans, even when they're reasonable. And over time, that uncertainty builds a kind of quiet tension. It's not panic, It's just this constant low-level feeling that something might be off. And that's what complexity does. It doesn't always break your finances, it slowly unsettles your mind. Now here's where it gets interesting. A lot of people believe that simplifying their finances means doing less, and doing less feels risky. It feels like you're missing opportunities, like you're not being as smart or as strategic as you could be. But in reality, simplicity isn't about doing less, it's about removing what doesn't matter. It's about recognizing that not every option deserves your attention. Because every additional decision you introduce into your financial life has a cost. Not just in time, but in mental energy. And that cost adds up. Think about it this way. If you had to make just 3 financial decisions a month, you'd probably feel pretty clear and confident about them. You'd have the space to think them through, understand them, and follow through without stress. But if you had to make 30, even if each one was small, something changes. You start rushing. You start guessing. You start relying on instinct instead of clarity. And when decisions feel rushed, confidence starts to fade. So the goal isn't to know everything, it's to reduce the number of things you need to think about. Because the fewer decisions you have to make, the better those decisions tend to be. The shift usually happens when you realize that financial success isn't about building the most advanced system, it's about building the most sustainable one. And sustainability has very little to do with complexity. It has everything to do with consistency. When something is simple, you're more likely to stick with it. You're less likely to abandon it when life gets busy, stressful, or unpredictable. And that consistency compounds over time in a way that complexity rarely does. There's a quiet moment where this clicks. It's when you stop asking, what else should I be doing, and start asking, what actually matters here? And once you see that clearly, a lot of things start to fall away naturally. You don't feel the need to track every detail. You don't feel pulled toward every new strategy. You stop trying to optimize everything. And instead, you focus on a few things that you understand, and trust. That's where calm confidence comes from. Not from doing more, but from knowing you don't need to. If you look at your current financial setup and it feels overwhelming, that's usually a sign that there's too much going on. Not necessarily too much money, just too many moving parts. So instead of adding something new, it might be more useful to start removing things. Ask yourself which parts of your system actually help you, and which ones just create noise. Sometimes it's multiple accounts that don't serve a clear purpose. Sometimes it's tracking systems that feel more stressful than helpful. Sometimes it's investments you don't fully understand but feel like you should keep anyway. You don't have to eliminate everything. Just reduce enough so that you can see clearly again. Because once things are clear, decisions become easier. And when decisions become easier, consistency becomes natural. And when consistency becomes natural, confidence follows without you forcing it. Another thing that helps is narrowing your focus. Instead of trying to improve every area of your finances at once, choose 1 or 2 things that matter most. Maybe it's building a steady saving habit. Maybe it's sticking to a simple investment plan. Maybe it's just making sure your spending aligns with what you actually value. You don't need to do everything at once. In fact, trying to do everything at once is usually what creates the problem in the first place. And if you like thinking about money in a way that feels more calm and grounded like this, you'll probably find the rest of these conversations helpful too. There's also something worth saying about comparison. A lot of financial complexity doesn't come from necessity, it comes from exposure. You see what other people are doing, what they're investing in, how they're optimizing their money, and it creates this subtle pressure to do the same. Even if your current approach is working. And that's where simplicity often gets replaced with unnecessary layers. Because it's hard to stick with a simple plan when you're constantly being shown more advanced ones. But confidence isn't built by keeping up with everything. It's built by staying aligned with what works for you. And sometimes, what works is surprisingly simple. At the end of the day, money is supposed to support your life, not take it over. And when things become too complicated, it starts doing the opposite. It pulls your attention, your energy, your focus, away from the things that actually matter. Simplicity doesn't mean you're ignoring your finances. It means you've structured them in a way that doesn't demand constant attention. It means you've removed enough noise that you can trust your system without checking it all the time. And that trust, that quiet sense that things are handled, is what real financial confidence feels like. Not loud, not dramatic, not constantly proving itself. Just steady, calm, and clear. And once you experience that, you start to realize something that changes the way you approach money entirely. You don't need more complexity to feel in control. You need less. And if that way of thinking resonates with you, there's a lot more to explore here, but for now, just take a moment to notice how much easier things feel when you don't have to carry everything at once.